all of that. So we're first going to start just with a quick set of introductions, and then it's on to you. And so we're going to, I want to get rid of this mic, and we can just share these lavaliers so we can make sure that the room is appropriately covered. I'll start, and then I'll hand this to you. Ed Smith-Lewis, director, whole purpose, setting the stage for our team to perform on it. Although this time I'm also performing on it. And so it's all about helping our team sort of galvanize around you to ensure that we do three things in the next 5 years. Number one is to develop what we're calling the support infrastructure. Some of you may call it scaffolding. Some of you may call it technical assistance that you need to execute your plans. That's our number one priority. We want to make you successful. Number two, we understand the difficulty of building engagement with the workforce. And so we want to leverage the collective to bring opportunities to the individual institutions. And so we'll be doing work around faculty engagement with the workforce, potentially internships, although that comes out of another house at UNCF, but building those relationships so that those internships are available and that those employers become more aware of you, the institution. And then the third piece is to execute a robust evaluation of what you're doing, what we're learning, how the work is progressing or not, and start to communicate a different message about what our institutions are doing on behalf of the students that we serve, many of whom are low-income, first-generation students. So that's my role.
Can you all hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of the days. They all blended together at this point. My name is Samad West Keys. In addition to the work that I guess everything that Ed does and some, I'm also responsible for helping to developing our workforce development strategy and how we're going to move forward in engaging the workforce in this particular work. Included in my duties also is the managing of 13 of the 24 institutions that we have. However, I'm probably in all 24 of the meetings. Like I said, my duties and responsibilities spanned. Let's see. In addition to that, what else do I do, Ed?
Everything.
Everything, right.
That's sufficient for now.
So I'm one of the folks that don't like talking, so if you see me up here quiet, it's okay.
Yeah.
Lies.
Truth telling from now on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daryl Ann Watkins. I am the Senior Program Manager for ICB, as well as the Career Pathways Initiative. A lot of you know me in the ICB role. What's up, everybody? It's me. It's so good to see all of you again. For the Career Pathways Initiative, I manage 11 of the institutions. Samad is my mentor in this. He knows a lot about it, so I am leaning on him to help me. But in addition to that role, I am also the financier. That means that I disperse money, and I make sure that we are being very intentional in how we allocate money and the funds that we spend for the Career Pathways Initiative.
Hello, I'm Isidra McGlone. I'm the program coordinator. I guess you might call the front line of defense, so I'm pretty sure I've spoken or emailed with everyone in the room. I help with the logistical things like planning of site visits and disconvening, and also working with Samad and Daryl Ann to assist them with working with the institutions as well.
Hello, everyone. Again, I am Latoya Owens, Senior Manager of Assessment. For the Career Pathways Initiative, I am charged with creating a plan to track and then study the activities and outcomes of this of the entire initiative. So the activities that go on at each one of your institutions to understand how we can improve effectiveness or efficiency as the grant goes on at each planning stage, but then also to understand the ultimate outcomes and to produce lessons learned and best practices from the work.
All right, so we're going to open this up. And I know some of you have burning questions.
You told us earlier
Yes.
that you had.
Right here.
This isn't a question so much, Ed, as a sharing of information. Can you tell them, since the presidents and chancellors, we were separate, can you tell them about the last exercise we did and what you intend to do with that?
Yes.
And share that with them?
Absolutely. So I didn't get a chance to do this earlier in the debrief only because we had so many presidents present, which is a great thing to see, especially considering they were excused yesterday. But what we did throughout the 2 days, I should say, is really go from the abstract, really thinking about what does it mean to be a leader, particularly on a campus, all the way down to where Dr. Anderson would like me to go, to think about what are some practical things the presidents could do to help drive or accelerate the progress of the cohort. And one of the caveats there was you can't be self-interested. So if you think about the benefit of all of the institutions, sometimes that means setting aside your personal best self-interest for the collective. And so in small groups, there were 4 separate groups. They dialogued around opportunities, challenges, assets within their institutions, and then they developed 12 proposals. 12 proposals that they made as recommendations to the CPI team to help them drive over the next 5 years of partnership with you. From those 12 proposals, they each got 3 stickies, and they got to vote on their top ones. And there were 2 that really stood out, and those 2, I think, are indicative, at least from our perspective, of the significance of this work and the type of change that's required to get it done. So the first one, the one that got the most votes, and I was happy to see it because it's something we're actively thinking about, is what is the academic delivery model necessary to drive the kind of change we seek? And the reason why I was excited that that was a question that was top of mind for them is because we've constantly said there's an important need to look at curriculum in this work. Therefore, faculty are important, but to use a Cedrus line, faculty are the front line. But there's a lot of policies and structures and resources that sits behind those faculty that need to be addressed as well. And they're cognizant of that. Because in many ways, sometimes our policies or our structures or even our incentives are not necessarily driving the kinds of actions that we want, and that may be holding us back. And so their question was, what does the academic model how does it look across our 24 institutions? Is there something that can be learned and ideally adopted and adapted at our individual institutions? So that was a question that they posed to us. The second, and closely related, is then what is the financing model behind that? What is the resourcing model for our institutions? Understanding that many of us are what I would like to call lean institutions, heavily lean, right? Where heavily lean, right? Think about that. That you're way into the lean category. And we know that, right? We know that many of you have at least 4 hats that you wear, and you're a slacker. Because there are people with 12 hats or 16 hats. And we understand the constraints here. We also understand the ask here. And the presidents, I think, understand the ask, which is why they need to understand how could they best resource that. So there were other things that are also very exciting. They very much aligned to what was coming out of the collaboration session with EdLab that you guys got to. And so what I would say ultimately, just to wrap this portion up, is the presidents are very much thinking in the same way that you are. And I have to say we need to commend you because ultimately you're the ones driving the work, you're developing the work, and I could say now, and I wouldn't have said this last year, that I do feel like our presidents are informed of what you want to do. And most importantly, I think they're thinking similarly in terms of challenging the norms. The last point I would make is there was a very significant conversation around the opportunity we have for publics and private institutions to work together. Now, we oftentimes see that we act like we're battling for the same students, when in reality, there are many more students than we can bear that could benefit from our educational opportunities, and we can take greater advantage of that if we work together than individually going at it alone. And that was sort of the biggest takeaway for me from that. But a very deep conversation, as I said before. They gave us 2 additional hours beyond what was planned.
I have a question. Far as the timeline on campus visits and being able to showcase what we've done so far, are those dates still in place or have those dates changed?
So currently, we are in the process of developing our engagement, calendar or framework. The way we look at it right now is that there'll be 2 points of, physical contact, if you want to say. One where we'll do a site visit on the campus, and we look at the CPI convening as being an additional one. And there can be others as needed. And then there'll also be virtual visits as well, where we'll spend the face-to-face visit will probably be about a day and a half. We're still debating on this. But there'll be about a day and a half, and then the virtual visits will probably be about a day long as well, so that we can make sure that we're tackling each parts of your team and diving in a little bit more to figure out where we can provide you with the best support. So to answer your question, the dates have not been set, and we're going to work with the campuses to arrange when that will happen. More than likely it'll be in the fall, and then we have the summer convening in the summertime. And then we have... And then we have the other visits that will happen in between. But like I said, those will be virtually.
And that's when we'll have all our data ready for you that you can review what we've done thus far.
Yes, and we plan to meet with each part of the team, from the president to the provost to we want to make sure that we're all together. Right. So that's why we have a day and a half, or we're looking to schedule a day and a half for those visits.
Can I just add to that? The level of engagement will be by a case-by-case basis. So some institutions will receive more engagement than others. It just really depends. And if you need us to be more vocal with you, to visit you more often, or just help you be of any of assistance, please feel free to let us know what level of engagement you prefer. Some institutions ask for a yearly check-in, just check in with us, and some ask for more engagement.
So I'll add to Darrell Ann's point that in the beginning, because many of you are going to take off with this work as of August, right? This is when you're actually implementing this work. We're going to be checking in a lot more frequently. And so don't get annoyed with us.
Right.
If I just start to call you, and the folks that I call, I don't stop calling until I get an answer. I'll find your cell phone number, or I'll get on a plane to come see you if you don't answer those. So just know that we'll be doing more frequent check-ins as you all progress within this work within this first semester. So be aware of that. We're going to get those on the schedule as well. They'll probably be about 30-minute just check-ins, like I said, frequently.
And what I would say there, too, we've had a few check-ins in the past where the entire team came. We really appreciate that, but just note that that's not necessary always. And so we ask for a 0.5 FTE within our grant agreement with every institution dedicated to this work, such that the burden of meeting with us isn't a burden for the institution, that it is the responsibility of your primary contact to relay messages to the institution. And so we know there are a few times where it was a struggle for us to get a call because we were trying to meet calendar requirements. Well, moving forward, we are calendaring with the primary contact, and if the institutional team cannot make it, it is then incumbent on the primary contact to relay the information. It's the most efficient way to get this done, and so we will be more strict in that, because meeting with you is meeting with you 24 times on our end. And so the reason for that 0.5 FTE was to make this process of engagement with us easier. And so right now it feels like maybe it's a 0.2 FTE and that's enough. But moving forward, especially as Samad said in the early parts of this, it'll be a lot more engagement.
So while we're on the subject of engagement really quickly, I just want to go ahead and add, some of you are okay with picking up the phone and asking a question. We applaud you for that. Give yourselves a round of applause, right? But then there are others who may be a little fearful about picking up the phone. Remember, please remember, and I say this all the time, our job is to make sure that you do this work and you do it well. And so whatever support that we can provide you, do not hesitate to pick up the phone, 404-302-8606, right?
8602.
8601. So, but please pick up the phone and don't assume, right? It's okay to pick up the phone and ask us a question,
Right.
to gain clarity about this work. Our end goal is to make sure that you all are successful in the work that you are doing on your campuses. So ask questions. No question is a dumb question. And I know that all of you some of you may have heard me say this earlier. My mother gave a rule, and the rule was, if something's going on, I need to find out about it from you than to find out it in the streets.
Right.
All right? And I hold to that. So I want to know what's going on before I find out in the streets.
Right.
So call me, please. Let me know what's going on so that we can start to put together plans or strategies to make sure that you actually are doing the work in the way that's going to be successful for all of you.
Dr. Lomax? Oh, okay. Claudia?
Claudia from Spelman. Last year during our site visit, Ed, I think you mentioned the possibility of funding for faculty externships to send our faculty out to learn about non-academic careers.
Yep.
Has the plan for that become any more clear?
Short answer, no. Long answer, yeah. And the long answer is currently we're observing the Google in Residence program. I think at least 10 of the institutions in this room are participating in that. Our plan is to understand more before we roll it out. And so Samad and I are actively engaged with another team that's leading that Google in Residence program at UNCF. Our role is to document the structure, the learnings from that, the best practices, and most importantly, the feedback from the faculty members that are participating and the employers. What we're going to do from that is devise a generic structure that we use across multiple different industries, and then we'll do some outreach for that. In year one, which will be next summer, it will be a smaller version of a fuller program that we will roll out in subsequent years, but you will get those opportunities, or those opportunities for the first summer, that next summer, will be available at the end of this year. So we'll announce it at the end of this year, the opportunity. We'll select probably early beginning next year for summer opportunities. We are working diligently on that now, and quite frankly, once you leave, that's our number one priority.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, we're learning an awful lot from this this faculty experience at Google, and I think some of you are probably getting feedback, robust feedback from your faculty members who are on that in that experience, and it's intense because a lot of this has proved to be a very specific, dense environment we've sent them into, and it's had a lot of challenges. But we're viewing the intense feedback as really opportunities for great learnings that we will then be using to help further the design. And I think that that's kind of the point I wanted to make, is that one of the things that I hope is it's going to be sort of new for the public institutions and evolving for the relationships that we have with the UNCF member institutions, is that there are certain areas related to CPI where UNCF has really been building new muscle and new capability. This area of faculty engagement and we've got 31 faculty members at Google, and I mean that's a lot of folks, and they're highly visible because they don't look like most of the people who are at Google, and we're learning a lot. But the other two areas that I think UNC is building strong expertise in, and I hope that you're going to really take advantage of that, and that we're going to think about ways of sharing what we have learned and are learning and know, will be one in the area of internships, because we went through a very significant redesign of our internship program, which had been very big at one point, had really fallen into disuse, and over the last several years, we've seen emerging significant interest on the part of employers in having internships, and we have redesigned the programs to bring a lot of best practice elements into it. And John Rice was here. Well, we do the boot camping, and John and MLT have helped us design that work, and as they have helped us design one of our other programs, the Walton Social Entrepreneurship Program, which some of you have probably had. I know many of you have had students participate in. So that we are viewing internships at UNCF as developmental educational opportunities for the students, so that there's a boot camp for them before they go, and then a lot of monitoring and engagement with them and with the companies about creating the right kinds of learning environments for them. And so we want to continue to grow that and to develop that, and we want to do that with you, and we want you to get the benefit of what we know, but hopefully also we want to develop more of those internships that you'll be using. The other big thing that we've learned a lot about over the last 20 years has been building online relationships with students in cohorts. And we started that with the Gates Millennium Scholars Program. But now most of our major internship programs have online, the cohorts are managed and work together online. And there's a lot of learning that happens in those, both formal and informal. So I hope that as you all are working with what they're going to do, that we're not recreating the wheel, and that they're learning from your colleagues at UNCF, particularly in the programs area, and Talia Gibbons, some of you know her, she was here, who runs all of our internships. She's been here, real expert in the area, and Larry Griffith, many of you know Larry, who oversees all of our programs, about those online cohorts. And you've worked with Chad Womack, who is doing all the STEM work and is doing the work out in Silicon Valley. So I'm hoping that, particularly for the publics who don't have a working relationship with us as often, that you're going to see that there are other resources in UNCF that we're going to bring to bear as a part of this program as well.
Thank you.
Question in the back.
Hi, I'm James from West Alabama, and this is what I need.
Hey, James.
I need a logo request for my university. So I need all the logos that you have, the CPI initiative, and I need them in JPEG format so I can disseminate them out to the university, right? Yeah. Another thing I need is a 15-slide or less PowerPoint presentation of the overview of the CPI. So when I talk to my faculty and I show them this PowerPoint, it's exactly what you do and how you want to get your information across. And then I can tell them about our program. Another thing I need is a QR code for my students that they can click on and see this initiative. I need those three things to help disseminate information. Can I get those three things?
All three of them are doable.
We got you.
So, Jace, what we would like you to do is please send an email to Isidra McGlone.
No, you need to do it right now. Do it right now.
Listing all those three things, and I'm sure other people. I'm sure other institutions have needs that if you send an email to Isidra McGlone right over here, she will ensure that you receive everything you need.
We can provide all three of those to you, though.
We have all three.
Yep.
Brian.
Yeah.
So
we
it sounds
heard
like-
for everyone.
Yeah.
We heard. Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yes.
We'll do.
Any other questions?
Up front, well, right there.
I think he started something here.
You talked a little bit about the learning community. Just trying to figure out what the ETA for that is, because I think it's really important that we continue this conversation not only with our respective institutions but with the entire group.
Right. And so the ETA is yesterday, but we're off schedule, to say the least. What we're doing right now is we're really trying to find the one that makes the most sense. We've met with a few different ones. If you're using one that you're really interested in, please do share with us. But it's a hard choice. Number one, we want to minimize the number of times you have to sign into things. And we want to make sure that the at least interface is actually usable. So a lot of the learning communities that we've come across are all about real-time engagement. It's not necessarily about repositories and searchable ones at that. And so we have a number of requests when it comes to what are the key elements we're looking for in the learning community, but do know it's probably priority number 2, but of the workforce engagement strategy and the learning platform should come more readily. So we are deep in conversations with 2 potential options, and we will roll that out as soon as we've nailed it down. And ultimately, I'm managing a little cost as well on behalf of it. So we will have it ideally by the end of the year, but preferably very soon after the semester starts.
Good afternoon. Ronnie Hopkins, South Carolina Cluster, Voorhees College. We had some wonderful presentations during this event, and we sort of got confirmation from some presenters that we kind of sort of might get PowerPoint. We would like to know, will you facilitate our getting PowerPoint presentations and other materials?
Yes.
So just to set a blanket statement, from now on, anytime you see anything at a CPI event, convening activity, you will get that documentation unless otherwise stated. The only presentation you won't get from this convening is Jim Shelton's. But everything else that you've seen, everything else that you've interacted with, you will receive following the convening.
Another question. In the past, UNCF has made available subject matter expert consultants for use by the participating institutions. Is that still the plan going forward?
It is the plan. We are trying to decide how best to leverage the resources and in what areas is that most important. The reality is it's a struggle right now to pinpoint the most useful lever at this time because we can't get technical assistance for every portion of the strategy. We're trying to find the greatest need. And to do that, we've actually documented every activity of every institution across our 3-pronged approach. Next steps is to work with your working team to validate that. Based on that validation, we'll determine the greatest need in this year for technical assistance. But we will continue to have that throughout the process. If we are frank here, we sort of saw this first 6 months of the year more as refinement of your plan. And because of the support we gave you around the planning grant and the support we knew we were going to give you here, we've sort of deprioritized technical assistance for these first few months. But you should see that too appear before the end of the year. Reappear, I should say. All right, these are easy questions, guys.
Yolanda's raising her hand. Hey, Yolanda.
Don't be too harsh. No,
I feel
totally.
like I have to revise my question.
No.
So I think everyone appreciates your flexibility and you're not wanting to be too prescriptive, but I think that's also presented a challenge because a lot of our institutions are used to getting grants where we're told exactly what to do when. Here are the dates, here are the expectations. And so I was wondering if you've given any thought to kind of how to manage that going forward, whether there is an opportunity to have some more regular communication, if you're receiving common questions from a lot of the schools, and realizing there may be some more framework or information that you can provide as it's developed.
Right. And we appreciate that. And a lot of it, we're building the plan as we fly it. But we think the learning platform is going to be key to that. So as we think about that learning community, we see that as the vehicle of communication dissemination. Email lists are good, but they're not as effective as we would like, and it doesn't allow the group to engage effectively. So once we get the learning community, in terms of real-time engagement, you'll get it as we learn. Once we solidify how to talk about the work that you're doing, so earlier we spoke about sort of language alignment and ensuring that we're all using the same terms to mean the same thing. And that's a lot of that work's going to come from the back and forth we get around validating what we saw in your proposals, those activities. We'll start to get better at communicating what we're learning. Right now, we may say one thing and it'll mean two different things to two different institutions. I also want Dr. LaToya Owens to talk about the evaluation plan, which we'll start to get a lot more laser focused on what we need from you in that way. And I think that'll be more helpful. And before you go, the other thing I would say is, as of right now, you only have two hard dates. And that's a final report or annual report that's due at the end of September and a mid-year report that's due at the end of March. Those are only two things. And I appreciate the prescriptive comment because we thought we were being too prescriptive with the three-pronged approach. It's great to know that you've opened the door to get a little bit more aggressive. So thank you for that.
Okay, so just to give a really kind of high-level overview of what we're doing with the evaluation. So there are various stages of an evaluation plan, and currently what we're doing is collecting stakeholder insights to ensure that when we're in the outcome stage, when we're going back and analyzing what exactly happened, we know what questions we're responding to from who. So we want to understand what policymakers want to see from this, what funders want to see from this, what our campuses want to see from this, and that includes the administration, the staff, the faculty, and very importantly, the students as well. And so the culmination of those interests is what shapes our evaluation. So we're currently collecting those to solidify the questions that we're asking of ourselves. So when those are shaped and developed, what we do is share with you the tools that we're going to use to assess whether we've reached our goals, the goals that we've set from our questions or outcomes, right? So I think when we make contact with you, what we'll do is share the larger plan for evaluation, meaning the learning goals, the objectives, et cetera, and the tools that we'll use to assess each one, if that makes any sense for you. Okay, and we don't have an exact date on sharing that information, but we are in the early implementation stage right now, so that will be ready soon. Okay.
Just one more thing with regards to the process. All of the institutions have developed timelines for the work to be completed. I would suggest now that you have revisited your implementation plan, you're going to add to it and make some changes to it, you might want to relook at those timelines and put some dates to it rather than fall or spring. Attach some months to those timelines, and that would enable us to help you stay on task, right? We look closely at those timelines, and if anyone knows me, I am a process person. They call me the taskmaster. I wear it proudly, but I strongly believe that when we are on time, when we are focused on what we are doing, that we will be able to achieve the goals that we have set. And I know that the ultimate goal is for all of us to be successful. So let's look at those timelines, revisit it. You can call me if you want, or Samad, and what we'll do is help you to even redevelop if need be, and then we can all work together to make sure that we hit those timelines. Another thing that I wanted to mention each of the institution or some of the institutions had an opportunity to give supplemental information that would add to the institutional the institutional implementation plan. It is imperative that we understand those supplemental supplemental documents was a necessity for our purpose, and the expectation is that you are delivering on those supplemental plans also.
So to Daryl Ann's point, she was very PC with it. You all submitted some additional material as a part of your proposal to help strengthen what you initially received. Some folks decided that wasn't, it may not have been in their best interest to do what they submitted to actually supplement their proposal. No, that's supposed to be a part of your proposal. Mm-hmm. So the things that you all added to strengthen your proposal are actually things that need to be incorporated in the work that you're doing. So when you're talking about it, don't leave that by the wayside. That's still very, very important. And it's probably one of the reasons why you were selected to participate within the initiative. So don't let that go. The other thing is, to Daryl Ann's point, I'm going to stress the timeline piece, because we had to review each of your proposals. I've seen all of them. And so there's some that say, we're going to get this in about 2017. That doesn't help me, right? So I need you to help me help you. So if you can give us a realistic date, so when you all go back to revisit your proposals, let us know what you mean by what are we calling it?
Projected date.
Yeah, the projected date or milestone in which you plan to complete this, because 2017, it's about 365 days up in there. So we just need to make sure that we're able to actually help you and actually track the progress that you're making along the way. I would say give me a month and a year.
Yes.
The other thing I would say too is, and the reason why we haven't been pushing on those milestones, is we really feel like there's going to be engagement with your primary contact and the working team to get those right. So what we've done is document what you've said, both at the activity level, the milestone level, and the metrics that you want to track. The reality is, I can't think of one institution that has fully met our needs, right? And so we'll work together with you once we start to engage, which is sort of why the engagement plan is taking a little longer. We're trying to decide how do you start to tackle some of the concerns that we have. But do know, you've submitted information that once we agree is right, that's what we'll use to sort of do some of that tracking and sort of prescriptive pushing.
Can I ask a quick question? Does everyone know who their primary contact is at UNCF CPI? Does everyone know? Does it? Just a head nod would do.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Awesome.
Okay, awesome.
The other thing I would say, if you are the primary contact, and Asidra, you're welcome. If we send you information, it is incumbent on you to send it to your team. And so when team members call and they say, oh, we didn't get that, or what meeting invite, or did I get the confirmation number, or what's the dial in? Well, we note that. Asidra is crazy about Excel. We have every type of item that you ask for that you
colors,
want in different colors. It's crazy.
Tabs.
She's the only one that understands it. But if you ask her a question, she will give you the answer. Right. And we're noting that, right? Because I go back to that 0.5 FTE. There's a responsibility for this work that we've allocated resources for, that you've allocated resources for within the grant. We want to use those resources, and we want to use them efficiently. It is very difficult for us to know, especially, and take off, let's hope there's not too many externals in here. There's a lot of change happening. One of the things that we're tracking for our own learning purposes is the amount of times you guys call us to change a name on a list, right? And so it is very difficult for us to keep up with that across 24 institutions. We know it's a struggle for you, and we appreciate that. But the primary person who's responsible for the grant is the primary liaison between UNCF CPI and the institutional teams. And we will give feedback to your leadership if the primary contact is not doing their job. Now, I say primary contact because that's the language we all started to sort of settle on, but the role of the primary contact is more of a project management role. Your job is to keep your hand on the pulse of what's happening across the various departments and schools and teams and individuals on your campus, such that if and when Samad or Daryl Land calls, you know the answer. Now, a couple times, few people have gotten stumped. We've asked the question and you have to get back to us. That's okay, but we do expect that you get back to us. But the real goal is that you are cognizant of what's happening. Because if you're not cognizant of what's happening, we question whether the institution is cognizant of what's happening. So the role of the primary contact should be more of a project management role, and they need to be embedded or at least have clarity and transparency into all aspects of the grant. Because if and when we meet with them and the rest of the team can't come, and they're unable to answer some questions, then we have feedback that's probably not warranted. So please make sure that your primary point of contact is someone that is included in those conversations and has the visibility necessary to engage with us effectively.
Mel had a question, and then we'll come to you, Eloise.
Yeah, so Mel Foster, Morehouse College. Talking about the changes of directions and redoing some of the things we're planning. Along with that would be the budget reallocations. I just wanted to ask if you could, if there's a specific way of going about that, of requesting that.
So we are in the process of actually developing a budget modification form. So oftentimes what you all have done is sent it to us in an email. That's not good record keeping for us. And so it's actually very, very extremely difficult. And so what we're going to do is actually develop a budget modification form in which you can actually show what the proposed budget is for that particular year, show the modifications that you're looking to make, and then from that, the process would then go a review across the CPI team and whether or not we're going to go ahead and approve it or not.
Right. And just to be practical for a second, you all received a budget template form.
Right.
Just imagine a second column that says modification, right? Because we want to track where you were and what you moved to as well. So you've seen the form. You're just going to see additional columns in that with some explanatory cells.
Good afternoon. Eloise Alexis, Tennessee State University and the C-Cube cluster. There's been quite a bit of conversation about EAB and the interest. But if we're interested in the other vendors or presenters, are there rules of engagement or opportunity to leverage our volume in our conversations with those vendors as well?
So there's not really opportunity from a top-down perspective. So we're never going to impose a vendor or service provider onto you. But the expectation is if you are approaching a vendor or service provider as an individual, that you really vet what that opportunity is and how it integrates with your current systems and how you leverage it for its fullest capacity for its minimal cost, right? So that's if you're going at it individually. Secondarily, what I would push all of you to do is recognize the people that are asking about this and reach out to them. And if there is critical mass around something, we are very much ready to engage on what the possibility is to broker an opportunity, but that's only if it comes from you.
Right.
Now, what I would say is number 6 on the key takeaways with design thinking was the Student Success Collaborative. Well, if it's an opportunity that every institution in here is thinking about, then we're willing to engage with EAB on what the possibilities are across the cohort. But what we're not doing is brokering the relationships for individual institutions or a couple of you. That's your role. But if we see something boiling to the top of the list as needed across the cohort, then we're totally into it. We're ready to help make those relationships happen. I'll remind you of the president's conversation. They're asking for it. The question is, what is that opportunity and what capacity do we have to actually make that happen? So we're really interested in it. We think of you as a cohort. We hope that you start to think of yourselves as a cohort, or if I pushed it to the furthest extent of cohort or collaboration, a strategic alliance. How do you think about this work as strategically aligning with each other to get the most bang for your collective resources?
Exactly. And so that approach that Ed talks about is the same approach when you think about it. When we did the Pachaka presentations, for those of you who had a chance to sit in on it, we didn't invite these individuals just because we wanted to push them down on you. We invited them because of the fact that you all expressed an interest in learning more about these particular service providers and what they had to offer and how they could actually help you solve your problems on your campus. So to Ed's point, it's never a top-down approach for us. We advocate for you. And so if you all, like Ed said, come to us as a collective and say this is something that we're interested in moving forward on, Ed and I have no problems with having a conversation or getting on a plane to go talk to somebody.
Two more questions.
It was a young man in the back, and we'll get to you.
In listening to what you're saying here in this conference, I'm hearing you say that you're looking at paradigm shifts, not only in the way that you educate, but in the way that you give experiential education to your students. One of the things I think we have to begin to understand, and my history is quite different because I was at a large engineering university and ran these programs for 35 years. What we don't tend to keep in mind is in the summer, the people who work at these industries have children. And whom do you think they're pushing for these internships? They're pushing their children's, their friends' children's, and everyone else. So the opportunity is small. I mean, there are only but so many opportunities. What I think we have to begin to look at, and this may not be optimal for every institution, but everyone can't go to work in the summer. Some of them need to go to work in the fall, and some need to go to work in the spring. Because when you're working with these large institutions, they create work in the summer because it's only 6 to 8 weeks. But when a young person is involved in working with an industry for the fall semester, that's 18 weeks. He or she is typically put in a team, and they have to produce what we call real work. And that supervisor is responsible for that real work. And I mentioned a moment ago, this is not optimal for everyone. But in some instances, a student who is not financially capable of continuing enrollment at your institution could be working that semester and making money. And in most cases, in many cases I should say, receiving financial support when they return to school. Because these companies, if they find them early enough, they'll support them financially. And so you're creating a scholarship for a student who now is no longer on your financial aid roll, if you will. But all I'm saying is we need to look at all opportunities that are available to our students. I mean, if everybody's trying to get on the A train in New York, somebody's going to miss it. Because the train is not going to wait. So just keep that in mind and start expanding your thought pattern for these opportunities for your students.
Thank you, sir. There's one other question up front.
This will be our last question, and then we have a couple giveaways, just based on participation.
Ooh.
Good afternoon. Is it on?
Yes. It's on.
David Padgett, Tennessee State University, primary contact. I just have a question as far as the evaluation. Is the evaluation based more upon effort or results, or some balance between? And the reason I ask that question is we're being asked to be innovative, and if we're going to be innovative, we cannot operate from the standpoint of fear. And a lot of the feedback that I'm getting in some cases, not from Eloise, of course, but is, well, what if this doesn't work? Well, what if that doesn't work? Well, what if it doesn't? If we don't, I mean, even in my class, I'd rather have students try and get it wrong than sit back and why haven't you guys gotten started? Well, we want to know, we just want to get the right answer. There's no right answer, but it's wrong if you do nothing. That's absolutely wrong. So if we put an effort in and we try something and it's innovative and it's cutting edge and it blows up and is a total failure, is that going to be counted against us or not? I guess that's my question.
So an evaluation, I think people get scared, right, when they hear the word evaluation, and they get scared when they hear the word site visit, right? But I think evaluations are never punitive. The idea behind an evaluation is that it's really not. You all make that face. It's really not. It's not punitive.
Not in this.
Right, because you're right. How do we say innovate? But then, okay, but you didn't produce. Now, we want to see you make progress, right? Now, if you say we're going to increase our graduation rates from 20% to 80%, and it's still at 20% after the 5 years, now we're going to ask you, why weren't you doing things to actually rectify this issue before the end of this 5-year period? So I think that's the biggest piece of the evaluation. It's never about being punitive. It's really about just, I'm going to let you answer because this is your area anyway. But it's never about being punitive. It's about actually growing and developing. So never look at it as I know I say this right now, and I'm probably going to say it 100 more times to you all. The evaluation is not punitive. We're not trying to actually set you up for failure, right? We want you to succeed once again. So it's about learning and figuring out what we can do to actually change things along the way so that you actually can get to where you're supposed to go. LaToya.
I think changing things along the way is the biggest piece that you need to take away from what Samad said, because evaluation is twofold, right? As we look at the goals that you set for yourself, and as you continue to reassess, we'll be able to tell you how you need to reassess, how you need to maybe reshape your goals or the activities that you have to address the learning that you wanted to or to address the outcomes that you wanted to have happen. And then ultimately, we're responsible to not only you as a group of institutions, but other stakeholders who have interests in this grant. So if you are successful, we need to collect all the pieces of the story to be able to tell it well. We need 50 more institutions to be able to do this work. We need, all HBCUs or higher education to be able to benefit from it. But if we don't know exactly how we were able to get those successes, we won't be able to tell that story, won't be able to replicate this work and allow others to replicate the work as well.
And I just want to add, it's not about just the successes, right? It's also learning about what may have led to failure so we can make sure that others don't do that as well. So the success is great, but if you fail, we want to make sure that we note that as well so that we can actually say, okay, this is what we need to do to make sure that we can change this so that others don't suffer from this same particular issue.
But nobody's going to fail.
That's not an option.
Everybody's going to make progress. Let's say that. The other thing I would say too is we are going to talk about the successes and the failures. And you all agreed to that. And just know that there's learning and failure. We know that. You know that. And so we're going to tell the both and story here because there's benefits to both. Because you're being so aggressive, I'm going to give you one more question. Blue shirt right there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
So I'll be quick. So to be clear, I'm an outcome. I'm the first grandson in my family to graduate from college. I'm the daughter of a Rush College graduate. My mom is a Rush College graduate. I'm the son of a Rush College graduate. I apologize. My grandmother went to Rush College. I know how hard this work is. You guys saw me go around your tables. All right, I am an outcome. That's what you guys are all working for, and I empathize with how difficult this is. It's even harder to leave your great job and start a business to help you solve these problems. So my question to you, and I'm glad you guys talked about the private partnerships and the conditions for private partnerships. The ask that I have for everyone in this room is please come and tell me and help us make sure that you are successful, because this is what I do full time. This is what my kids eat off of. And he specifically said, they stated that they're not going to push it. It has to be a collective decision. So I would ask that if you have suggestions, recommendations, directives that you need to be successful, we want to be successful. We want you to be successful, and we want the UNCF to be successful so that we have more outcomes in the future.
Yeah.